leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you.
What's going on, family, and welcome back to another episode of Shifting the Culture podcast, where we speak truth to power, elevate the people, and challenge the narrative. I'm your host, Brother King Cam, and we want to get right into it. I know y'all done heard the news. Pooh Shiesty, Big 30, under investigation. Pooh Shiesty was arrested by federal authorities for an alleged robbery in a Texas studio of a robbery and kidnapping, allegedly, of hip-hop artist and legend Gucci Mane. So let's dive right into that, and let's have a discussion. All right, so listen, it says, Pooh Shiesty arrested for allegedly robbing and kidnapping Gucci Mane at gunpoint. Pooh Shiesty arrested for allegedly robbing Gucci Mane and kidnapping at gunpoint. Pooh Shiesty, along with his father, Lontrell Williams Sr., and fellow rapper Big 30, have been arrested for allegedly robbing and kidnapping at gunpoint Gucci Mane and two others earlier this year. Shiesty, real name Lontrell Williams Jr., is one of 8 defendants who were taken into custody by federal authorities this week in connection with the incident. A 9th suspect remains at large. According to the Department of Justice, Shiesty arranged a meeting with Gucci Mane and 2 other music industry professionals, referred to by the initials of MM and BP, on January 10th at a Dallas recording studio to discuss the terms of his contract with 1017 Records. When the 3 men entered the studio, Shiesty and his crew executed a coordinated armed takeover, the DOJ claims. Shiesty allegedly pulled out an AK-style pistol and forced Gucci to sign contract termination paperwork, releasing him from his deal. The Back in Blood rapper is also accused of stealing Gucci Mane's wedding ring, watch, earrings, and cash. Now, since all of this has come out, Gucci has denied, any accusations of him being robbed, number one, or him being kidnapped, and then 2, also, there was paperwork that was coming out saying that Gucci cooperated with the authorities to identify Pooh Shiesty, and Gucci is saying that that didn't happen. But we're not even really discussing that. Essentially, what we really want to talk about, what I want to shift our focus to, and I want to shift the culture mindset to, is the thinking of Pooh Shiesty and Big 30 and everybody else that was involved in this whole situation. Because when you think about it, it sounds so crazy that you would even think that you're going to rob somebody at gunpoint or hold them at gunpoint and then force them to sign your music contract releasing you. Especially when Gucci got a resume and a history of releasing rappers from his label. Waka Flocka was on his label. He let Waka go and do his thing. He had Nicki Minaj on his label. He let Nicki leave 1017 and go sign with Cash Money, or Young Money, rather, with Wayne. So he got a record of actually allowing artists to leave his label and to go and make other independent moves if that's what they choose to do. So I don't see why Shiesty thought it was necessary that you would need to set up a meeting, allegedly with Gucci in Dallas, to get him to force him to sign you out of your deal. To force you to get signed out of your, to sign the paperwork releasing you out of your deal. But what we really want to discuss is the inability to communicate when we got problems and set up conflict resolution. Because how do we go from having an issue with your contract in business to us setting you up for an alleged kidnapping and robbery? And that's how we are going to handle the situation. We're not going to jump on the phone. We're not going to try to have a meeting, a business meeting, to figure out what we can do to try to set up the terms that you agree with, that Gucci agree with, the money that make everybody happy, and then we can go ahead and keep it pushing. Everybody can go home at night. But we get to the point where we committing a crime. And Say Cheese had put up a post. Am I gonna be able to see it? Matter of fact, I can pull it up. Say Cheese put up a post, and it kind of detailed Pooh Shiesty career. And it was like, okay, he blew up in 2020, which is 6 years ago. That same year, he robbed and allegedly shot a sneaker dealer. They shoot the inside of the club in 2021. He get locked up for 5 years in 2022, but he get out early in 2025. He have FDO, first day out. That joint blow up. Then you have this situation in 2026. So it's like, what's the propensity for the violence is the question. You know, why you making hot music, but then there's an incident when somebody shoot up the club, somebody get robbed, somebody else get shot. Then you go to jail, boom, you get out early, you come out, you got another hit song. Then there's more crime, there's more violence. So what is it about the propensity for violence? And I just want to say this part, that we got to stop, young black men got to stop thinking that being gangster and that the street mentality is the way to go. People say the streets is dead. The streets is not dead. The streets is operating the way the streets always been. The streets has always been either prison or the graveyard. The streets has always been that way. Streets ain't changed. Ain't nobody escaped them necessarily. Like the streets, they gonna hit you either way it go. Nobody getting out unscathed. Nobody got out who didn't go to prison. Nobody who went to the graveyard got out. That was in the streets. So the mentality of the streets, the impact, the influence, the residue that the streets leaves on you when you in them is always gonna be there. And young black men got to understand that that's not the residue that you want to have on you. You don't even want to get involved with it because it's nothing but stress and trauma and pain and agony and strife. All of these different things is what come with the lifestyle of the streets. And a lot of OGs will tell you that the reason they got in the streets was to get money, not because they loved the lifestyle. A lot of young black men get into the streets because they think the lifestyle is something that we should look up to. That spinning and sliding and, taking out ops is a notch on the belt, if you will. When in reality, those are things that come with being in a particular lane in the streets, and those are just the things that come along with it. But that's not what nobody signed up to do, and nobody signed up to be a part of, which is, anxiety, grief, stress, trauma, all of these different things that come along with it. Nobody wants to be that. And on top of that, the minister did a lecture entitled Justifiable Homicide. And in Justifiable Homicide, the minister laid out the government's plan against the black youth in particular. Because that same energy that Pooh Shiesty have for somebody like Gucci Man or anybody else that look like him, the enemy really afraid that if that energy get redirected in a proper direction to those who have really harmed us and harmed our community, then they would have a big problem on their hands. So the minister said this about the young people. He said, the generation of the Messiah. Our young men and women are the finest generation that we have ever had. Because you are the finest generation, this is why you are under attack. The elders were made by Pharaoh. They had Pharaoh's mind. And this made it difficult for them to hear Moses. Even the elders that heard Moses and went out with Moses into the wilderness were twixt and tween, meaning that some of them wanted to go back under Pharaoh because it was difficult in the wilderness. When the elders saw that the land that God was going to give the children of Israel for their inheritance, the elders said, there are some giants over there in that land. Moses, Aaron, you and your God go and clean them out, then we'll go in. But when God wanted to do this, but what God wanted to do is whip the giants to prove to the world that he doesn't care how big they are. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. God wanted to bring the giants down, and he wanted to use the children of Israel as his battering ram. So the elders said, paraphrasing, well, I'll tell you what. It's been nice knowing you, Moses. We really had a good ride with you, but we're not going any further if you're going in there with those giants. So God communicated to Moses and said, take the youth, take the young people, take Pooh Shiesty, take all those who want to slide, and let them go in, and they will inherit the promised land. Now, I'm saying this, I added Pooh Shiesty and all that at the end. The minister didn't say that. But I'm saying because this particular situation is dealing specifically with Pooh Shiesty, that is who God wanted Moses to take into the promised land. So the young were the generation of the Messiah. The young were made tough and hard because the time we are living in doesn't demand any punks. The time demands a heart that is tired of the evil and is willing to follow God. And the ancestors of these youth who bore them, who suffered the hangings, burnings, and castrations at the hands of their oppressors, will say, I've got a generation that's not afraid anymore. I've got a generation that's ready to inhabit the promised land. So the mindset of us, as of young people, is we're not afraid. People like Pooh, people like Big 30, people like Lil Durk, and all of our young black men and women. And I'm saying, I'm included in that because I ain't older than Durk. I ain't that too much older than Durk. But we're not afraid. We're not afraid. What the minister wants us to do, though, is that we have to channel that energy away from taking it out on our own brothers and sisters, though. We gotta take out that misdirected anger, and we gotta stop taking it out on our own community. Stop being menaces in our own neighborhoods. The situation between Pooh and Gucci could have been a conversation. It didn't have to get to gunplay allegedly. It didn't have to get to an alleged robbery. It didn't have to get to alleged kidnapping. It's just a conversation that need to be had. So we got to think about, why do these young black men like a Pooh Shiesty think in their mind that in order to communicate, they have to communicate through violence? In order to get their point across, they have to get their point across through violence. In order to get anything accomplished, they have to get it accomplished through violence. Better yet, in order to get praise, in order to get adulation, in order to get love, they have to get it through the vein of violence, even in the music. So this is a mindset that we're dealing with a particular individuals when it comes to young black youth and young black men who think that the way that they are able to gain love and able to, feel appreciated is if they commit violence and wreak violence on others in the community, in the neighborhood. And that's just not what we want to see. And this is a trend. This is not something that is new. Pooh Shiesty is not the exception to the rule here. He's not an outlier. He is just another one in the manufacturing chain of the niggas that have been made in America. We all wear that tag on the back that say niggas made in America, because the enemy make niggas. God don't make niggas, but the enemy do. And we all got that tag on the back that say made in America. Now, what we got to figure out is, how do we rip that tag off? And we start moving with a different purpose in a different light. Because we think that we want to be gangster, and being gangster is what we want to accomplish. But the minister said we're not even the real gangsters. He said, who is the real American gangster? How many of you have seen the movie based on the life of the black heroin kingpin Frank Lucas called American Gangster? How many of you have seen the black entertainment television series American Gangster? The movie and television series were both released at the same time in 2007. Do you think it was an accident to have a movie and a television series program airing simultaneously, all about the lives of black so-called gangsters? This is no accident. The mind of Satan is running the record industry, movie industry, and television industry. And everything that blacks have built, Jews now own and control. For example, BET, Essence Magazine, Motown, and black hair products. The mind of Satan can produce movie and television programming where they will make black people look like they are all murderers and gangsters. But black people are punk stuff compared to who the real murderers and gangsters are. The aim of this enemy is to make you come out of seeing the movie American Gangster saying, damn, Frank Lucas was powerful, in hopes that it will inspire you to try to be like Frank Lucas. Now listen to the wisdom in that. The minister said that the enemy owns and runs music, hip-hop, media, entertainment, and they create and develop television programs and movies about black guys or black men or black people in general being gangsters. And then you go and watch the movie like I did, because I watched Frank Lucas, and I did exactly what the minister said. I walked away from watching American Gangster and said, damn, Frank was powerful. I mean, I literally did that. And it said in hopes that it will inspire you to try to be like Frank Lucas. And at a certain point this how serious it is. At a certain point, I literally was like that in 2007, 2008. I just graduated high school, and I saw how Frank was rocking his suits, and Frank was moving, and Frank was getting money. That movie was powerful, and it was Denzel Washington, so they know who to put in the movie as the leading role that's going to capture young black minds. So Frank and American Gangster was a powerful movie, and the minister said they do this in hopes that you walk away from the movie thinking that, damn, Frank Lucas was powerful, and that you try to be like Frank Lucas. So now what you want to do is, instead of going to college and getting a degree or getting a trade and being productive, you want to go straight into the street life so that you can become a gangster, because you're trying to live up to what Frank Lucas was. When the real gangsters and the real killers are the ones that are playing puppet master. And they got you running around here shooting and killing your own people. And they are reaping the benefits of you going to prison or you going into the graveyard. Or more often than not, they get a 2-for-1. They get a 2-for-1. In the graveyard and in prison. What's going on, family? That's right. We got to rip that tag off, bro. We got to rip that tag off. So listen to this history, though. In the 1960s, during the Civil Rights Movement, your grandparents were on picket lines marching against white supremacy and racist Jim Crow laws. Your grandparents were being beaten down with fire hoses and dogs, and they were put in prison just so you could go to the toilet today. We paid a hell of a price to get something as cheap as a voting right that the enemy has been trying to find ways to take away from you. The moment the riots began popping up in cities throughout America, during this time signified that black people were starting to rise up. Despite the enemy's desire was to make you think that every black person had the same kind of dream that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had, there were black people who didn't want anything to do with integrating and going to school with white people. There were black people that would never turn the other cheek and be nonviolent. Groups like the Black Panther Party were considered the deacons for defense in their communities. But the moment that kind of strong spirit was growing up in the people, a purer form of heroin was introduced into black communities. Therefore, Frank Lucas was a pawn of the powers that wanted to drug those powerful black people who weren't being drugged by religion or drugged by the enemy's education. So in the movie American Gangster, you see them shooting up heroin and dying out. This is who Frank Lucas was. He was killing his people for money. In the movie, they said Frank Lucas had planes flying in with pure form of heroin and that he even outsmarted the mafia. Well, you can believe those lies if you want to. What message is this movie trying to send? Do you think you can out-criminalize the real criminals? Is that why your behind is filling up all of the jails in America? And they are working you like slaves in the prisons, just like they did your great-grandfathers on plantations. Is that why you think you can outdo the white man in criminal behavior? He is the number one criminal because he just doesn't rob you. He robs countries. He just doesn't kill you. He kills whole populations. You are a cheap killer and a cheap thief compared to him. The American Gangster movie was designed to inspire you to a gangster life, and the whole BET series focusing on black gangsters was designed to distract young black men in order to inspire them to more criminal conduct. Again, the minister speaking directly to me because I was affected by that series, American Gangster, that they had. Because I watched a lot of those series and learned a lot about black gangsters. And what the minister is trying to warn us is that if you're not careful and you're not able to separate right from wrong and true from false, because a lot of what they put in the movie American Gangster was not actual facts. Like the minister said, being able to outsmart the mafia. The mafia was running, most of the lanes of criminal activity. There's no way in New York City, especially, there was no way you outsmarted the mafia. The mafia allowed you to operate. There's no way you outsmarted the American government. The American government just allowed you to operate. There's no such thing as outsmarting them. And we see that with Freeway Ricky Ross and Franklin from other TV shows, where in those shows you see the CIA was working directly with Franklin or with Freeway Ricky Ross, helping to bring the heroin and distribute it in California. So you don't get past the government. There's no outsmarting them. But the whole idea is to inspire you to a gangster way of life so that you can ultimately end up dead or you can end up in a prison. And then when they end up in prison, then when you end up there, they can work you like a slave because now the 13th Amendment kicks in. And the 13th Amendment that so-called abolishes slavery now says except imprisonment, now reintroduces your black butt back to a plantation where they now can utilize your labor for their exploitation and their financial gain. Your black behind becomes a slave based on the 13th Amendment because you go and get inspired either through music or through movies to be a gangster, to be a killer, to be a hitman. And when they catch you, now you go on your way back to prison to become a slave. So the mindset that a Pooh Shiesty may have around conflict resolution has to be changed. The conversation has to be changed. And then you see a lot of people in the a lot of young black men in the comment section saying they understood, why Pooh Shiesty did what he did. No, you can't understand why Pooh did what he did because what he did was completely wrong. And you throwing your whole life away. The enemy not playing with us. The prison industrial system is not playing with us. They are meaning to fill those jail cells with bodies. They don't build those cells and put those cots in there not for bodies to go in there. Bodies are going in there. Now, you can play around if you want to and think that you outsmarting somebody who's been locking people up before you was born. They put the 3 strikes bill, crime bill, into play before some of us was even born, or just a little bit after some of us was born. And then when you look at the Reagan administration and Nixon administration, that was before we was even born. They've been doing this crime game. So you can't come along as a Johnny come lately and think that you done figured it out. No, man, we got to stop thinking the street mentality is going to get us anywhere other than a road of no means, a means to no end. Because, as I mentioned earlier, it's nothing but stress, trauma, and anxiety and grief and things that you don't want to bring into your sphere of being. What you want to do is you want to remain on the positive road, and you want to get behind a positive movement so that that aggression and that fearlessness can be used in a way that can produce positive results for yourself, positive results for your family, and positive results for the community. That's what we should be striving for. So, we don't know what the outcome of this Pooh Shiesty Big 30 situation. They said it's 9 individuals total. It was Shiesty and 8 others. I believe Big 30 is included in the 8. And, this has to serve as a cautionary tale, as many others serve as a cautionary tale of, man, your life can change just based on the decisions that you make. Your life can change in a split second based on the decisions that you make. That's why making good decisions is so important. As a person in general, as an adult, as a teenager, making good decisions is extremely important because your life can change in a matter of seconds. Now, the moment that Shiesty and them allegedly executed this situation, their life would change that quick. And you might have think you got away with it because it happened in January. Nothing happened in January. The feds don't come knocking until April. But they come knocking once they get all their ducks lined up. So, of course, they got to wait for you to commit the crime. They got to wait for people to snitch. They got to wait for their informants to come back and give them information. They got to wait for people to corroborate the story. They got to go and make sure that they can get the warrant, present all the evidence, get the warrant, execute the warrant, because that's how they end up in Shiesty House a couple of days ago. So all of this, they building this up. And that's why the feds have a 98% conviction rate, because they don't come to play. They're not coming to play with you. They're not even wasting their time and resources unless they already know they got the warrant to execute on the search and they have the arrest warrant to take you in. They're not playing. So what we got to do is we got to stop playing ourselves, thinking that we can outsmart them. No, what we should be doing is redirecting that energy and redirecting our focus into something that's positive, that's going to help clean up our situation and help change our lives for the better. That's what we need to be doing. And this is why, like with D1 and, others trying to change the trajectory of music and hip hop, we got to clean the message up, fam. That's it. We just got to shift it just a little bit and clean the message up. And once we do that, you'll start to see the impact of that across the board with a lot of our young people. A lot of our young people, you'll start to see the change. So, I just wanted to bring that to the conversation. There's a lot of people that's talking about what happened, and a lot of the people are echoing the same sentiment. about making better decisions, getting out of the streets, doing something better for your family. But I wanted to add to the conversation that the street piece that we know, obviously, is a dead end road. But now, where do we go when we put it down? Because for some people, that's all they know. So where do we go when you put it down? And we have to have an avenue to go when they put it down. So we got people out here that's working on different things. Man, we got to get trades. We got to get, more black men in higher education because we need more engineers, scientists, doctors, lawyers. So we got plenty of spaces to fill. But what we don't need to be filling is the jail. We don't need no more 3 hots in a cot. That's not what we need. We don't need nobody doing no bids behind crashing out over things that could be talked about. A lot of young black men, it's too easy to crash out because they're emotionally unstable. They don't know how to communicate verbally. They can't communicate. They can't solve a problem through communication. So the only way they know how to solve a problem through communication is when the anger is built up from frustration, they go to violence. That's how it go. They become frustrated with something and they don't know how to communicate it verbally. So it stays inside, and as the anger builds up, the way they release is through violence. That's how they get it off their chest. We got to step in and we got to change that, family. So, appreciate y'all for tapping in tonight. Appreciate y'all for checking in. And, man, let me know in the comment section. What's your thoughts? What you think about what happened with, with Pooh Shiesty and Gucci, and what you think can be done to help change the situation. Comment your thoughts below. Let me know what you think. Peace.